Hello, children. This is your second session of your biology class. In the last class, we saw about biological classification first part, and you have also written the unit test. I hope you have all done well. So, now we are going back again to the lessons. I hope you remember all the topics that we have gone through the biological classification 2 lesson. So till taxonomical aids we have stopped. Throughout the lesson we were seeing about what is classification, what are the components needed for classification, why are we classifying this, what are the types of classification. So those were the things we were seeing. The next topic is hierarchy of classification. So, what is hierarchy? Hierarchy means it is a system of classification in which all the categories, different categories of the taxonomy. So, what is taxonomy? Those which are used to classify something which is related to classification is known as taxonomy. So, these classification have been divided into different categories. So arranging those categories based on some logical sequence, arranging them orderly is known as hierarchy of classification. So we were talking about taxonomic categories. So arranging all the taxonomic categories according to some order is known as hierarchy. What are those categories? What are those taxonomic categories means? Those different categories that we are going to see now. So the first one is species. So species means it is the most lowest category of the living organism, and it is the most basic unit of classification. Species includes a group of individuals, any group of similar individuals. They will be similar in structure and as well as function. So, for example, we can take a hibiscus flower. So, if you see that hibiscus flower means a set of a bunch of hibiscus, 10 or 12 hibiscus flower we are taking. So, if you see means the external structure also will be similar and internal function also it will be similar. So, these hibiscus, those are looking similar. They are put under one species. We will take human beings. We are all more or less similar. We have two hands, we have two legs, we have two eyes. Structure wise we are similar, and the function also is similar inside it. So what happens, we are all putting under one species. So a group of individuals who is having a same structure and same function is known as species. And the second one is genus. Genus means it is a group of closely related species with common ancestors. So in genus, they are putting similar species. They may be related. For example, we can take hibiscus flower itself. In that itself, we have color variation. White we have, yellow we have. So the red we have. So red is one type of species, and yellow is one type of species, and white hibiscus is one type of species. So we are putting those three different species under one group that is called as genus. So it is a group of closely related species with a common ancestor. For example, in the book they have given potato and brinjal. So they are having common ancestors. They have some similarities. So they are put under the same genus. I have already told you about the binomial nomenclature. So there we are using two names, species name and the genera name. Genera name is nothing but the genus name. So here the potato and brinjal, they have the same genus called Solanum. Even though they are different species, but the genus name will be for potato and brinjal, it will be Solanum. Okay. So next is family. So family means a group of genus is taken and they have some common characters. The genus who have some common characters, they are together put under one family. And next is order. So in order, what they will do, a number of families which have common characters, those family which have common characters are taken and placed under uh, an order. So for example, Ursida is nothing but it is the family of bears. Canidae, it is the family of dogs and wolves. And Felidae, it is the family of cats, tigers, etc. So these bear family, the dog wolf family, and cats tiger family, these three are put together in one order called carnivora. So this is an example. Even though they are different, some characteral similarities are there. So these are being taken together and put under one order called carnivora. So the next is class. So similar orders, they are placed under one class. And next is phylum. So many classes with some common characters, they are put under one phylum. And finally, kingdom. So it is the highest category of taxonomic studies. So as you can see in the image, the kingdom is the first category of the whole classification. It is the highest category. So all the animals are put under one kingdom called Animalia, and all the plants are put under one kingdom called Plantae. Only two major kingdoms are there. One is Animalia and Plantae. And under that only different organisms are being placed. So this is all about the hierarchy of classification. And you can see the image. First the domain is there, and below that kingdom and phylum, class, order, family, genus and species. So this is the exact order of the hierarchy of classification. Any organism that are to be classified, it will be placed in this order only. The next topic that we are going to see is systems of classification. So we were seeing about the different types of classification and how they are being classified. And there are some systems of classification. Those artificial, natural and phylogenetic classifications, they are older classifications. Based on some characteristics only, they have been classified. But these systems of classification, we in the before slide we saw about the hierarchy of classification, right? So based on that principle, they these systems of classification have been done. So there are 3 to 4 types of classifications are there. Now we are going to see that now. First system of classification is two kingdom classification. So living beings have been classified in different ways from time to time by different workers. So various researchers have classified the organisms in different ways. So all the living beings are classified into broader categories. It is nothing but kingdom. In the last hierarchy of classification itself, I have told you majorly all the organisms are classified into kingdoms only. So first is two kingdom classification. In this two kingdom classification, it was given by Carolus Linnaeus in 1758. So according to his this system, the whole living beings, all the living beings are put under only two kingdoms. One is kingdom Plantae and another is kingdom Animalia. So this two kingdom classification, it was later not accepted by many of the other people. So it has been a failure because organisms like Euglena, those are all, they do not belong to neither plants nor animals or fungi. They do not belong to any of these groups. And if the classification is based on only plants and animals and organisms like euglena and all, where they will place, we cannot place them in anywhere else because they do not belong to any of the categories. So this classification was a failure. Next is three kingdom classification. So to solve the problems of the two kingdom system, Ernest Haeckel, in 1866. He is a German zoologist. Zoologist means who classifies only animals. Those persons are called as zoologists. So this Ernest Haeckel, he was a German zoologist. He advocated, he brought about the three kingdom classification, in which the whole living beings were put in to three kingdoms: Plantae, Protista, and Animalia. So under Protista, all these small organisms like Euglena, amoeba, bacteria, virus, those microorganisms are not put under the category Protista. And all the plants were put under Plantae, and all the animals were put under Animalia. So this was the three kingdom classification. Next is four kingdom classification. So this was first discovered by Copeland in 1956. So he gave the four kingdom classification and he included Monera. With Protista, he included the Monera category. So Copeland originally called kingdom Monera as Mycota. So he called the Monera as Mycota. So this four kingdom classification, as you can see, it is divided into Monera, Protista, Metaphyta and Metazoa. So Monera means all the small, not well developed organisms. They do not have a well defined cell organelles. So those organisms were put under Monera. And next is Protista. So under Protista, what he did, he put the primitive eukaryote plants. So plants that are that have some primitive characters from before many years, they would have been having the same characteristic till now. So such plants, those which are not advanced, those primitive organism plants are eukaryotic plants. Eukaryotic means they have well developed cell organelles. They are those plants were put under Protista. And under Metaphyta, the advanced eukaryotic animals were placed. So the cell organelles are well developed and they are very advanced. So before hundreds of years, if you have seen that organism means, from that they would have been developed and evolved. So those are called as, according to the current situation, they would have had developed their characteristics. So those are called as advanced organisms. So advanced eukaryotic cells are put under Metaphyta. And finally, advanced eukaryotics, all the plants and animals, eukaryotics are put under the Metazoa. So this is the four kingdom classification. So this chart denotes how the organisms are majorly divided. So first is prokaryotes and eukaryotes. So prokaryotes means, as I told you, the cell organelles, the mitochondria, the nucleus, the endoplasmic reticulum. So all these organelles, they would have been not well developed. So such cells are known as prokaryotic cells. So these prokaryotic cells are nothing but all the unicellular cells and they are put under Monera. And on the other side, if you see, means eukaryotes. Eukaryotes means all the organelles are well developed. That is, they have a cell wall, they have a nucleus, they have a nuclear membrane, and nucleolus is present, genetic material is present. All the organelles are very well developed. So these eukaryotes, they are divided into two types: unicellular and multicellular. So under unicellular, eukaryotic unicellular organisms, it is put under Protista. Some unicellular organisms, they have well developed organelles, so those are put under eukaryotes, and those that which do not have well developed organelles, I'm talking about only unicellular organelles, so those were put under prokaryotes. So well developed organelles, and it is a unicellular organism means it is coming under Protista. And eukaryotes which are multicellular, they are divided into two types. One is with cell and one is without cell. So with a cell means it is usually denoting all the plant species, because in animal cells they do not have cell wall. So if it has a cell wall, then it is automatically, we should know that it denotes the plants. So with cell wall, some plants may be photosynthetic and some plants may be without photosynthetic. So those which organism do not perform photosynthesis are put under one category, and those organisms which do not perform which perform photosynthesis are put under another category. And organisms that the plants that do not perform photosynthesis are nothing but fungi, and they are placed under fungi. And plants which are able to perform photosynthesis are placed under plantae. And this side, if you see, means without cell wall. As I already told you, if any cell is without cell wall, and it is called as an animal cell. And all the animals are placed under the animalia. So this is one classification. This classification is nothing but it is based on the five kingdom classification. The five kingdom classification. So all the living things have been divided into five major categories: the animals, plants, fungi, protista, and monera. If you have seen that flow chart very with full concentration, if you are not having any doubts with that flow chart, you can understand this five kingdom classification. If you have any doubts, just rewind again and see that flow chart, and then move on to the five kingdom classification. So the five kingdom classification, all the living things are divided into animals, plants, fungi, protista, and monera. Now, let us see about this five kingdom classification in detail. So, who first discovered this five kingdom classification? R.H. Whittaker in 1969. He was an American taxonomist. He found the five kingdom classification. Here, the whole living world, it is put under five major kingdom. So first is kingdom Monera. So all the prokaryotic bacteria and blue-green algae are put under the kingdom Monera. And kingdom Protista, all the unicellular organisms with well-developed cell organelles. So such organisms are called as protozoans and algae. They are put under Protista. And next is multicellular fungi are put under kingdom fungi, and under kingdom plantae all the multicellular green plants and some advanced form of algae. In the algae itself there are some algae who have some advanced functions. So those are put under kingdom plantae. And finally under kingdom animalia, all the multicellular animals are put under kingdom animalia. So this is all about the five kingdom classification. Now we are going to see about the five kingdom classification and in detail. So we saw that it is divided into five different kingdoms. Under that kingdom, what are the subcategories that are there? So all those things we are going to see now. So the first kingdom is kingdom Monera. So two major groups of Monera are there. One is Archaebacteria. It is the ancient bacteria. So these bacteria have been found since before a very long period. They are very ancient. And eubacteria. So these are the two categories of kingdom Monera. Two groups are there. One is Archaebacteria and another is eubacteria. And this eubacteria, it is further divided into two types. One is bacteria and another is cyanobacteria. And some other groups of monerans are also mycoplasma and actinomycetes. So other groups other than eubacteria, these Mycoplasma and Actinomycetes are also coming under kingdom Monera. So now I am going to tell about the Archaebacteria. So what is this Archaebacteria? It is a very ancient bacteria, and these bacteria, they are very special because they live in some of the most harsh and very tough habitats. The surrounding of the bacteria will be at very extreme conditions, very harsh habitats. Only in such places these bacteria will be present. For example, extreme salt areas where the salt content in the soil or water is high. So in such places, these archaebacteria will be found. They are known as halophiles. And under hot springs where it is very hot, where the temperature is very high, in those places these archaebacteria will be formed. So the archaebacteria that is formed in hot springs are known as thermoacidophiles, and marshy areas where it is very slopy and where the water content is too high, so those are called as marshy areas. Those In those areas where archaebacteria is found, they are known as methanogens. So these are the three types of archaebacteria. One is halophiles, where there is extreme high salty areas, and hot springs, thermoacidophiles, and marshy areas, that is methanogens. So these are the three types of archaebacteria. These archaebacteria, they differ from other bacteria. They because they live in extreme conditions. So that's why they are very different. The cell wall of the archaebacteria will be very different, and this feature is responsible for their survival in extreme conditions. They have to survive in extreme conditions. So there is some structural changes are there when comparing to the other bacteria. The cell wall is totally different. So that is what is told here. Next is methanogens. So I have already told you what is methanogens. Methanogens means archaebacteria which is present in marshy areas. So these methanogens are also present in the gut of several ruminant animals like cows and buffaloes. So in the gut of the ruminant animals means, ruminant means those animals which what they do, they take up the food and chew. They will store it in the gut, and after some time they will bring about the food again and they start chewing. So such organisms, such animals are known as ruminant animals. So usually camel, cow, buffaloes, so these are the animals that are ruminant animals. So these methanogens will be present in the gut of several ruminant animals like cows, buffaloes, and they are responsible for the production of methane. So these methanogens, they produce methane, that is biogas, from the cow dung of these animals. So the cow dung, you would have studied in your renewable and non-renewable resources. So there the about methane gases you would have studied. So this methane gas is produced because of this methanogens only, because they are present in the gut of these ruminant animals. So after chewing, after the digestion, in the cow dung, the methane is present because of the bacteria methanogens. Next is eubacteria. So bacteria are the sole members of the kingdom Monera. Most of the members are included in the bacteria only. The members of the kingdom Monera is bacteria only mostly. They are most abundant microorganisms. When you compare with microorganisms level, bacteria only has many number types of species. So bacteria are present everywhere. Hundreds of bacteria are present in a handful of soil. If you take a handful of soil and see, There are hundreds of bacteria in that itself. They can live in very extreme conditions like hot springs, desert, snow, deep oceans where other life forms can survive. So everywhere the bacteria is present, and many of them live in other organisms inside another living organisms also. These bacteria live, they are known as parasites. The bacteria, it is grouped into four categories based on their shape. So first is spherical coccus, that is cocci in plural form, and rod-shaped bacillus in plural, it is called as bacilli, and comma-shaped bacteria are called as vibrium. In plural form, it is vibrio, and the spiral bacteria, spirillum. In plural, it is called as spirilla. So these are the four types of bacteria based on their shapes. Some of these bacteria, they are autotrophic, that is they can produce their own food from some inorganic substances. So they are known as photosynthetic autotrophic or chemosynthetic autotrophic. Why they are called as autotrophic? Because they can produce their own food. Some bacteria may have chlorophyll in them. So they, with this help of sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide, they produce the starch. So they are known as photosynthetic autotrophic. Or sometimes it may be due to some chemicals present in the body of the bacteria. That may also be the reason for making them autotrophic. That is, they can prepare their own food. So those type of bacteria are known as chemosynthetic autotrophic. And the most of the bacteria, they are only heterotrophs. They do not synthesize their own food, but they depend on other organisms for food and some dead organic matter of food. Next is chemosynthetic autotrophs. So we were talking about two types of bacteria, photosynthetic autotrophic and chemosynthetic autotrophic. So for chemosynthetic autotrophic, what these bacteria do is they oxidize various inorganic substances. They remove oxygen particles and like substances like nitrates, nitrites, ammonia, and use the released energy from ATP production. So these organisms, I mean these bacteria, what they do, they change the substance into nitrates, nitrites, and ammonia, and it has to oxidize, right? For that it needs energy, so it takes up the ATP production also, and they play a great role in the nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, iron, and sulfur. Because these chemicals, nitrogen, phosphorus, iron, and sulfur, they play a very important role in the fertility of the soil and growth of the plant. It is very, very important. So nitrogen and all, it is mostly needed by plants. So that nitrogen is available through the soil only. So how the nitrogen is present in the soil? It is all because of this chemosynthetic autotrophs only. So these chemosynthetic autotrophs, they play a major role in the production of nutrients of nitrogen, phosphorus, iron, and sulfur. Next is heterotrophic bacteria. They are mostly heterotrophs are abundant in nature. Most of the bacteria are heterotrophic only. The majority are important decomposers. They will be present in the soil, these bacteria, and they will decompose all the dead and decayed matter. They will digest up all the dead and decayed matter, and they decompose the soil, and many of them have a significant impact on some human related affairs also. So what are those? Is they are helpful in making curd. So what we do to make curd, what will we do? We will pour milk and add some curd to it. So in the morning, if you say, means the milk would have been turned into curd. It is all because of some bacteria present in the curd only. So for making curd from milk and production of antibiotics. So antibiotics are helpful for fighting the diseases. So if you to get the immunity, so for that only we consume antibiotics. So for producing antibiotics also these organisms are used. And as I already told you, for fixing nitrogen in legume roots. So in the roots of the legume plants, legumes are nothing but all the peas, cereals, all the cereal varieties and pulses varieties, they are known as legumes. So in those plants, the root, what they will do, they will have some small root nodules. So in that root nodules, these bacteria will be present. What they do, they take up the nitrogen and they convert into nitrites, ammonia, nitrate, and they give it to the plant for its growth. So what they do, they fix nitrogen in legume roots. And some other pathogens, they also cause, some are helpful and some also cause damage to the human being. Some crops. So we can see some plants get diseased and they will turn into yellow color or white patches will be formed. So that is also because of bacteria only. So it affects human beings, it affects all the crops and some animals, that is also affected by the heterotrophic bacteria, and pets also get disease. It is also due to bacteria. Cholera, typhoid, tetanus, citrus canker. So see, these are some of the diseases caused by different bacterium. Next is cyanobacteria. So this cyanobacteria, it is also known as blue-green algae. They have chlorophyll. Since they are denoted by green algae, they have chlorophyll like all other plants, and they are photosynthetic. Photosynthesis takes place in these organisms and they are autotrophs. The cyanobacteria, they are usually unicellular. Only one cell will be present, and they form colonies or filaments. They will be present as a group only. They may be present in fresh water or marine water, or some may be terrestrial also. So these colonies, these group of bacteria, they are generally surrounded by some gelatinous sheath. So on sticky substance only these bacteria, colonies of bacteria will be present. They often form blooms in polluted water bodies. So these bacteria, they bloom, they change their structure and form a bloom in the polluted waters, or on the dirty waters they form blooms. And some of these organisms, they also help in fixing nitrogen in specialized cells called heterocysts. So these cyanobacteria also help in fixing the atmospheric nitrogen, as I already told you before. They have some specialized cells called heterocyst, for example, nostoc. So this special type of cell called nostoc only, they fix the nitrogen to the soil. Next is actinomycetes. So they are also known as ray fungi. So example, streptomyces. So these streptomyces, these bacteria are used for the production of some antibiotics called streptomycin, chloroamphenicol, and tetracycline. So these are some of the antibiotics that are produced from this streptomyces. And these streptomyces, they are the largest antibiotic producing genus. So these actinomycetes, that is example streptomyces, they play a very important role in the production of antibiotics. Next is mycoplasma. As I already told you, this actinomycetes and mycoplasma are also coming under the kingdom Monera. So the mycoplasma, They are the organisms that do not have cell wall, and they are the smallest living cells known. They are the most small cells, and they can survive without oxygen also. And many mycoplasma are pathogenic, that is they affect the animals and plants by giving diseases. Some category, most of the categories of mycoplasma are there like that, but some are also good. The next kingdom is kingdom Protista. So all the unicellular, one-celled eukaryotic organisms, that is, they have developed cell organelles. So such organisms are placed under Protista. But the boundaries of this kingdom, it is not well defined. That is, what type of organisms have to be placed in Protista. So that boundaries are not well defined. It acts as a connecting link between prokaryotic kingdom Monera. That is, here also unicellular organisms are there. In kingdom Monera also unicellular organisms are there. What is the difference is, in Monera, the cell organelles are not well defined, whereas in Protista, the organelles are well developed. So it is a connecting link between the kingdom Monera and the complex multicellular kingdoms like fungi, plantae, and animalia. So, what they are trying to tell us, it has some characteristics of kingdom Monera. That is, all the organisms under kingdom Protista have the characteristic of being unicellular. That is similar to kingdom Monera. Whereas, if you see this side, fungi, plantae, animalia, under these kingdom, they have well developed cell organelles. So that characteristic also is present in kingdom Protista. So both on both these sides, the characteristics are present in the Protista. So that is why they are called as a connecting link between kingdom Monera and the complex multicellular kingdoms like fungi, plantae, and animalia. So the kingdom Protista, it includes chrysophytes, dinoflagellates, euglenoids, slime molds, and protozoans. So these are some of the groups of kingdom Protista that we are going to see that in detail now. Next is chrysophytes. So these chrysophytes, they include diatoms and golden algae, that is desmids. The golden algae is also known as desmids. So most of these chrysophytes, they are photosynthetic, that is chlorophyll will be present and they can produce their own food. They are very microscopic and planktonic. So they float passively in these chrysophytes, they are mostly present on the waters only, and the walls are embedded with silica and thus are indestructible. So the walls of these organisms have silicas here and there, it is embedded. So this makes the chrysophytes very strong, so that they become indestructible. So due to the presence of silica on the cell wall, diatoms have left behind large amount of cell wall deposits in their habitat. And this silica, it is indestructible. So what happens, even the cell dies also, the cell wall deposition is there. So wherever this diatoms or golden algae they live, the deposition of cell wall is there. So it has been accumulated over billions of years, and it is referred to as diatomaceous earth or diatomite, because there are tons and tons of cell wall depositions are there. It has been collected for billions of years. So you can imagine how many depositions would have been there. So it is very economically very important for soundproofing, and it is used as abrasives, insecticides, and absorbent for oil spills. So these depositions has been used as various products. That is, they are used for soundproofing and for abrasives. That is, if any wound is there, for medicine like that, and it is used as insecticides also. It is used as if oil is spilled, for removing that oils, it is used as an absorbent. So all these things are made by this diatom depositions only. So these depositions are called as diatomaceous earth or diatomite. Next is dinoflagellates. So these dinoflagellates, they are mostly present in the marine and they are photosynthetic. Marine means the salt water, the sea water. So these dinoflagellates are present in marine and have a chlorophyll, then through photosynthesis they produce their own food. And some forms they occur in fresh water also. So some may present in marine water and some is present in the fresh water also. In most forms, the cell have stiff cellulose plates. So all the cell wall is made up of cellulose only. So on these cellulose, there are some stiff plate, like some stiff projections are there, and they can move. They are motile for with two dissimilar flagella. So these dinoflagellates, they have two flagella. So flagella is used for movement of cell. These flagella, they are not equal, they are totally unequal, but they are used for the motile of the bacteria. And some marine dinoflagellates, they are bioluminescence, that is, they can emit light in the dark. So for example, Noctiluca and red dinoflagellates, they undergo some very fast multiplications, so that they can make the whole sea appear red. So red tides. So these are the two different types of dinoflagellates that are present. That is, some dinoflagellates, they are bioluminescence, they can emit light, example Noctiluca, and red dinoflagellates, they multiply so fast that so that they can make the whole sea look red. So many number of bacteria are present. So many types of dinoflagellates are present on the sea water, so that the sea itself would look red in color. The next category is euglenoids. So as you can see in the image, the structure of euglena. So a membrane is there, cytoplasm is present, the nucleus and nucleolus are present, a flagellum is present for movement, a contractile vacuole is present, a photoreceptor. Photoreceptor means for receiving the sunlight, for undergoing photosynthesis. A photoreceptor is there, an eye spot stigma is present, it is present of chloroplast, and the nucleus is present. So these are all the parts that are present in the euglena. So what are these euglena? What are these euglenoids? So these euglenoids occur in freshwater habitats. They are not present in marine. They are present in freshwater habitats and very wet soil where the moisture content is high. The damp soils in such places only these euglenoids are present. Instead of the cell wall, they have a protein-rich layer called pellicle. So the cell wall is absent, but instead of it, a pellicle is present as a covering, and the body is very flexible. Though they are photosynthetic in the presence of sunlight, when deprived of sunlight, they behave like heterotrophs. So when sunlight is there, the photosynthesis takes place. When it is absent, it turns into heterotrophs and they undergo their process of getting the nutrition. So such a mode of nutrition is called mixotropic nutrition. So this euglena does not neither belong to autotrophic or heterotropic. They belong to a new category of nutrition called mixotropic nutrition because they are both autotrophic and heterotropic. So based on the situation, the mode of nutrition may varies. So it is known as mixotropic nutrition. Example, euglena. Next is slime molds. So these slime molds are a combination of fungus and animals. So these slime molds, they lack chlorophyll. They are achlorophyllous and saprophytic protists. So saprophytic means they feed only on the dead and decayed matter. So they are saprophytic protists and they are mostly present in very damp soils, that is high moisture content soils and very shady places where the sunlight is not much there, where it is very shade and wet. In such places only these slime molds are present. They are classified into two types. One is acellular and another is cellular. So they are extremely resistant and survive for many years even at very tough conditions. So they can withstand any type of conditions, whether it is very hot climate or cold climate, whether the salt content is too the whatever the situation may be, these slime molds can survive. So for example, for slime molds, Fusarium Dictydium, it is a acellular slime, that is the cells only one cell or no cell will be present. And Dictitostelium, it is a cellular slime mode. So there are two different types of slime mold. So these are some of the examples of slime molds. Next is protozoans. So these protozoans, they are aquatic. They may be aquatic. In aquatic itself, they may be freshwater or marine water. Sometimes they are terrestrial and sometimes they are free living. That is, they can survive on any conditions. Or sometimes they may be parasitic. That is, they live on only the living host. Inside one living being, it lives as a parasite and takes up all the nutrition of the host animal. So it may be parasitic also. So protozoans may be of any types. Their body may be covered by some delicate membrane or some firm, some hard pellicle or calcareous layer or silicaceous shell. So based on the type of organism, the covering may be present. So as you can see in the image, it is divided into four major groups. First is amoeboid protozoans. So in that radiolarian amoeba is there and foraminiferan. So these are the three examples for amoeboid protozoans. In the picture you can see the different images. Even though they are put under one group, the shape of the protozoans change. Next is flagellated, that is they have flagels. Flagellated protozoans, so trichomonas and euglena, trypanosoma. So these are some of the examples of flagellated protozoans. And third is ciliated protozoans. So these have small cilia hairs for locomotion and for taking up food. So, for example, paramecium, balanitidium. So, these are some of the examples of ciliated protozoans. And finally, sporozoa. So these sporozoa, they are non-motile. They cannot move from one place to another. And they are mostly parasitic. That is, they live on other living cells with infectious spore-like stage in the life cycle. What it does, these parasites, they affect the host cell and give some infection to them. So example, plasmodium. So as you can see in the image, these sporozoa are known as apicomplexians and plasmodium. For the first images, plasmodium in red blood cells and babesia in red blood cells. So these are the two types of sporozoa. So because of plasmodium only, the malaria is caused. It is a disease causing this sporozoa. It is a disease causing sporozoa. The third kingdom is kingdom fungi. The fungi, it is a eukaryotic cell. So the cell organelles are well developed, but they lack chlorophyll, achlorophyllus, and they depend on other organisms, heterotrophic, and these fungi have a small spores. So they are spore bearing and non-vascular, that is xylem and phloem are absent in them. So they are non-vascular organisms. Fungi are eukaryotic, achlorophyllous, heterotrophic, spore-bearing, non-vascular organisms. So the cell wall of the fungus, it is made up of chitin, a material called chitin. And the body of the fungus, it will be usually very long and slender. It will be very long and very thin, not very too much of hard. It is long and slender. Thread like structures called hyphae is present, and a group of hyphae, it is known as mycelium. A network of hyphae, it is known as mycelium. And usually fungi are symbionts. So symbionts means they will live with the support of another organism. So it is like parasite only, but it does not take up all the nutrition of the host plant or host animal. What it does is it just gets attached to the host, and it helps the host to get nutrition, and that also gets nutrition. So a mutual relationship. So fungi lives in such a way, that is symbionts means an association with algae called lichens, and with roots of higher plants called mycorrhiza. So what this fungi does, they will associate and live with algae. So they are called as lichens, and sometimes they may live on very huge plants. So huge category plants. So in such plants, these fungi will go get attached. So in such cases, they are called as mycorrhiza. So see the fungal cell wall. It is, as I told you, the cell wall is present of chitin and glucans is there, and below the chitin only the cell wall membrane is present. And in the cell membrane, the membrane proteins are present on above the chitin, manoproteins are present. So this like this only the fungal cell wall will be. So this is the structure of the fungi. We were talking about hyphae. A long slender structure will be there. So on the left side you can see the fungal hyphae, and inside it some algal cells are there, and below and on the top part the fungal hyphae is there, in between the algal cells is there. So this is only is called as symbionts. They are together, present together, and they live together. A mutual relationship is there between the fungi and the algae. And on the right side if you see means the mycorrhiza is there. So in higher plants on the roots, these fungi will be present for some mutual relationship. So because of the chlorophyll present in them, or because of some chemicals present in them, they help in food production. So with mycorrhiza, if you can see the image, without the mycorrhiza, see how the plant becomes. So this is one example. These are the two symbionts made by the fungus. So symbionts are also helpful. They are not like parasites. They are helpful and they maintain a mutual relationship. Next is classification of fungi. So these are classified into phycomycetes, that is lower fungi. It is also called as lower fungi. And example Rhizopus, and ascomycetes. It is also known as sac fungi. Example Neurospora, and basidiomycetes. It is also known as club fungi. Example Agaricus, and deuteromycetes, also known as fungi imperfect. Example Fusarium. So these are the four major categories of the fungi. Phycomycetes, these members of phycomycetes, they are usually present on the aquatic habitats. So they are usually present in water, and on you can find some wood pieces which are always wet and they are decaying. In those damp places where decaying woods are there, on those places also these phycomycetes may be found, or there may be some obligate parasites in the plants also. Sometimes phycomycetes may be parasites also. The mycelium is aseptate, that is they don't have any separation of walls in between them, and they are cenocytic. So for example Rhizopus. So cenocytic is nothing but the hyphae is present. So usually fungi will have hyphae, long slender like structures, and there is no separation of septate. Septate means aseptate means there is no separation, and they are called cenocytic. So when separation is not there, when septate is not there, it is called as cenocytic. And next is ascomycetes. So they are commonly, ascomycetes are commonly known as sac fungi, and the ascomycetes, they are mostly multicellular. Example penicillium, and sometimes unicellular. Example yeast. So these are all ascomycetes. So these example penicillium and yeast and all are very familiar words that you have already heard. So now you must know that these are all belong to ascomycetes group, and they are saprophytic, that is they feed on dead and decayed matters. So they are decomposers, and sometimes they are parasitic also. They are growing on the dung, that is the waste, excretory waste of the cow or buffalo. And mycelium, it is branched and septated. So they have separation, they have septate called the separation, and it is branched. Example Neurospora. So Neurospora, it is mostly used in biochemical and genetic research. So for all these purposes, these Neurospora is used. Next is basidiomycetes. So it is basidiomycetes. It's commonly all the mushrooms, the bracket fungi or puff balls. So these are all coming under basidiomycetes. So these basidiomycetes, they grow in soil, in huge logs, tree logs, and in tree stumps, the branch, the main trunk of it. So all these places, the living plant body also, sometimes as parasites also they live. So example, rust and smuts. So these are the examples of basidiomycetes, and the here also the mycelium is branched and septate. And next is deuteromycetes. So these deuteromycetes are commonly called as imperfect fungi because only the vegetative phase of these fungi are known. And the mycelium, it is here also, it is septate and branched, and some members are saprophytes and parasites. So they may feed on dead and decayed matter, or the living cell. So while a large number, most of them are usually decomposers of litter on waste products, where the waste products are there. So in those places only these new deuteromycetes will be present, and they will feed on those waste products. So they help in mineral cycling. Example, alternaria. So these are all the examples of deuteromycetes. So why it is called as fungi imperfect is the vegetative phase, like when it will grow and get mature, that phase is always unknown in the deuteromycetes. So that is why it is called as a fungi imperfect. The duration period of growth is usually unpredictable. So it's called as an fungi imperfect. So these are all the different types of fungi that we saw in the classification of fungi. So penicillium, yeast, puffballs, bracket fungi, and alternaria. So these are the different types of fungi. So for you to see the images, I have put up on this slide. Next is Kingdom Plantae. So under this Kingdom Plantae, all the plants are placed under Kingdom Plantae. So as you can see in the image, algae, different some higher algae like rhodophyte, phaeophyte, and chlorophyta. So these are all the higher algae which are put under the Kingdom Plantae, and bryophytes, mosses, tracheophytes, all the ferns, and gymnosperms, all the conifers, and angiosperms, all the flowering plants, all these are put under Kingdom Plantae. So this Kingdom Plantae, it includes all the eukaryotic chlorophyll, so presence of chlorophyll, and photosynthetic multicellular organisms. Only a few of them are heterotrophic, and that is, they are insectivorous plants or parasites. So insectivorous means for nitrogen supply and all, they need to capture all the insects for nutrition. So those such plants are called as insectivorous. So the insectivorous plants are sometimes heterotrophic, and some are also parasites in the Kingdom Plantae. And the cell level, if you see, means they are eukaryotic. That is, the cell organelles are well developed with cellulosic. The cell wall is made up of cellulose, and it is present everywhere. It is cosmopolitan in occurrence, and economically also, if you see, means it is very important because they produce, plants produce food, fodder, that is food for the animals. They give timber, fuel, etc. So all these are uses of plants. So it is economically also they are very important. And this Kingdom Plantae, they consist of algae, bryophytes, pteridophytes, gymnosperms, and angiosperms. According to the biogeography, if you see, means a type is said to be cosmopolitan distribution if its range extends almost across all and most of the world in appropriate habitats. So such taxon, that is the such categories are told to be cosmopolitanism or cosmopolitism. So for denoting how the plants are being distributed, they have given this text so that you should know that plants are present everywhere. So that is why it's called as cosmopolitan in occurrence. And the last kingdom is kingdom Animalia. So this kingdom Animalia, it consists of heterotrophic. So heterotrophic means already know it depends on other organisms for nutrition. So it is heterotrophic eukaryotic multicellular organisms are coming under the kingdom Animalia. So here the cell wall is absent and the chlorophyll is also absent, and these animalia members, they show holozoic nutrition. They depend on the plants directly or also indirectly, and sometimes these animalia may be saprophytic, parasitic or symbiont. So I don't have to explain each and every term, you already know, I have already explained you about all these terms. And they digest their food inside an internal cavity, and the food they eat is stored as glycogen or fat. So we have completed all the kingdoms of five kingdom in five kingdom classification. Next is we are moving on to virus, virions and lichens. So what is a virus? Virus, it is a nucleoprotein entity. So a protein is present inside it. So based on that only, the whole being is there, and it has the ability to utilize the synthetic machinery of a living cell. That is, if it is near any living cell, it has the ability to manipulate that cell of another organism for its for the virus to multiply. They can use up the other living cells for multiplication. So such an ability is given to the virus. So a virus consists of two parts. It is of two parts, nucleoid and capsid. So the nucleoid, it is the infective part. So because of nucleoid only, the virus is very infective, and it causes some metabolic changes to the host cell. And capsid is only the protein covering, that is, it is the genetic material with some protein subunits are present inside the capsid known as capsomers, and antigenic properties are also present. And the out envelope, it is the outer loose covering present in some animal viruses and rarely present in plant and bacterial viruses. So this covering envelope is made up of protein, lipids and carbohydrates. So if the virus is without envelope, it is called as a naked virus. So this is the viral structure, different viral structure. So we have three different viruses: bacteriophage, tobacco mosaic virus (TMV), and human immunodeficiency virus (HIV). So in bacteriophage, if you see, means the capsid protein sheath is there. Inside DNA is present, and these are the structures of bacteriophage. And here in tobacco mosaic virus, if you see, means inside the protein sheath, the RNA is present. That is the genetic material, and on the outer covering, the protein is being enveloped. And human immunodeficiency virus, if you see, means a protein envelope protein is there. The envelope is present above it. Inside you can see capsid, and enzymes are present, and the RNA, the genetic material, are present. So these are the structures, different structures of the virus. Next is the genetic material of virus may be of different types. So that I'm going to explain now. So sometimes the genetic material may be two strands, double-stranded DNA. So it is called as dsDNA. Example T2 T4 bacteriophages and pox viruses. They have two double strands like human beings. So such viruses are called dsDNA. And single stranded, only one strand of DNA will be there. It is called as ssDNA. Example, coliphage. And double stranded RNA, that is dsRNA. Example, wound tumor virus. These are all the different names of virus. And single strand RNA, that is ssRNA. So in tobacco mosaic virus, influenza virus, polio virus, all these viruses, a single stranded RNA will be present. So these are all the different types of viruses based on the number of genetic material, that is what type of genetic material is present, and the number of genetic material is present. So based on that it is divided. So in the image you can see nucleic acid, that is DNA, deoxynucleic acid, and ribonucleic acid, that is the full form of DNA and RNA. So in DNA, single stranded and double stranded are there. In RNA also, double stranded, single stranded are there. In RNA, single stranded, if you see, means positive bacteria, and that is positive virus and negative virus are there. So this is a flow chart of how the genetic material is present in different viruses. The second topic is virions. So these virions, it is the smallest self-replicating. That is, it does not need any help for replication, for division of particles, and it is described by Diner in 1971. And these virions, they have very infectious RNA particles, and it does not have any protein coat. These virions are obligate parasites. So these are parasites which live on the living host cell. And the last topic is lichens. So these lichens, it is a composite organism. It has a composition of the fungus living in some intimate association, in a close relationship with one or more photosynthetic partners. It may be green algae or cyanobacterium. So lichens is nothing but an association of fungus with a photosynthetic partner. It may be algae or cyanobacterium. The fungal member of this lichen is called as mycobiont, and the photosynthetic partner is known as the photobiont. And the lichens are considered to be the pioneer organisms because they make a region suitable for other plants also. So on some withering, in withering rocks or accumulation of organic debris. So a decrease in lichen population indicates that the air pollution is high. So although even though they symbiont, that is they create a very close relationship, not only to make their survival but also they help to develop the purity, that is develop the quality standard of the environment. So if any pollution is there, it accumulates and turns them into nutrition. So that is the role of lichens. So if there is a decrease in the population of lichens, then we can tell that the population, air pollution has been increased. Next is about Ebola virus. So this is a fun fact, an information section for you that is given in page 16. So how the Ebola is spread. What is an Ebola? So Ebola is a virus. There is no vaccine and no treatment is there for Ebola, and it causes severe, very severe illness, and it with bleeding, and it is highly contagious. So many people are being affected by this. Sick people also spread, that is they are contagious, they can spread the disease, and people in direct contact also get disease. It is similar to corona. and contact with dead bodies also we get the infection. So do not wash, touch or kiss the dead bodies, and do not wash hands in the same bucket as others who have touched the bodies. So these are all some of the ways of how the Ebola is spread and what are the precautions to be. So what are the symptoms of this Ebola? So symptoms start within the 2 days of contact with the infected person or the body. From dead body also, the virus is affected. From the infected person also is affected. The symptoms are shown within 2 days. So what are the early symptoms is fever, nausea means vomiting sensation, and nauseous. So fever, nauseous and headache, tiredness, these are the early symptoms, and later on vomiting, diarrhea, coughing and bleeding, all these are late symptoms. So how to prevent this Ebola? What to do if you get sick? Means you can catch Ebola from someone who is sick or dead. So wash your hands regularly. Use soap to wash your hands. And if any person is affected or infected, do not touch them. And even the dead bodies also they have the body fluids called blood, vomit, feces, that is the excretory products and urine, because through any of these things the virus may spread. And do not touch or eat meats, and don't eat bats, and call a medical center and tell about your illness. So keep away from others so they don't get sick. So these are some of the precautions to prevent the Ebola virus. So these are all about the Ebola virus. So now we have come to the last slide of the PPT and end of the session. So this is the second part of your Unit 1 lesson. So you have come across many new topics and new words. I know it is very totally confusing, but you have to learn. Uh, just go by part, because it is a video, since you can rewrite and see. So if you cannot understand it, watch it again and again so that you clearly get what I am trying to tell. If you have still doubts, there is no problem. If we have any Zoom class by chance, I am there to clear all your doubts. So learn well this unit. We have completed Unit 1. So this is all about biological classification, and a PDF will be presented to you in your groups, WhatsApp groups. So copy all the answers in your notebooks, even detailed answers also. You have to write it in your note, and when we are asked for submission, please submit it, and get your corrections. So do well children, learn, take care of yourself. Thank you.